But guns do empower people. They empower people to take action against their own death.
Never thought of it that way.
Hello, greater YouTube area and the surrounding internet regions. This is Killer Cardinal DA7. You know that thing how whenever you get on social media these days, you see people arguing? I see it too. When I see it, I often think to myself, it's probably a good thing these people are arguing electronically, because if they were face to face, this might end up in a bloodbath. What's your frequency on social media? Are you on a lot?
Upload me and prepare to defend.
I don't really do it that much.
No.
I stopped because it's very bad for you. I feel like I don't know. I just don't really use it that much anymore.
As I observe the most vicious arguments on social media, it makes me thankful for barriers like physical distance, the unlikelihood of people seeing strangers they argue with out in the world, and even if they do, the high potential for those people to back down from in-person confrontations. It is possible that those people unleash their emotions or beliefs just online and then go out into the world all cool, calm, and collected. Then again, for a lot of people, that's no longer enough. The line between what people say online and what people say in the real world is blurring. As much as I want to adamantly dismiss most social media posturing as just that, social media and real life are slowly becoming one and the same. People who used to keep their feelings to themselves are feeling more empowered to yell and scream in the real world. People who used to let their beliefs be personal thoughts are insisting those beliefs be made flesh in the real world. If a person says something, feels something, believes something, they need to say it loud and say it proud without any consequence or punishment. First Amendment, free speech coming through.
Yeah. People are gonna have their own opinions on what they should and what they shouldn't do. It's just the way that this society works. People have their own opinions on what they should and what they shouldn't do.
Yeah.
Or what people can tell them what to do and what people can't.
Yep. Everybody's opinion is valid and correct and right just because it's an opinion.
Yep.
The scary part is many of those people who want to speak out, they either have guns or they get guns. People can try to downplay mass shootings as being only a fraction of total gun death incidents across a year, but anyone from either side of the aisle believing in any political ideology can feel like they're pushed against the wall by judgment, mockery, inadequacy, insecurity. And what makes me believe a particular defensive person who feels judged, mocked, inadequate, and insecure won't pull a trigger if given a chance? If you own a gun, I'm not going to call you a psychotic lunatic like others will. I genuinely don't think owning a gun makes you an unstable nutcase. However, and this is not rhetorical or sarcastic, I genuinely want to know, what aspects of your personality convince me that you won't blow my head off over a dissenting opinion? After all, what's the most common reason people have guns? For protection, right? Well, that's fair. If that's the case, I want to ask you something else. Again, not rhetorical. What do you need protection from? If you're the type of person that immediately and impulsively snaps back at anyone who takes an opposite stance when you post an opinion on Facebook, even if you wave a gun around or like some display pictures of you holding your gun, what stops you from hunting down the dissenter? If your answer is because I don't want to kill anybody, do me a quick favor. Consider inserting that into discussions you have, instead of avoiding saying it altogether because you think it's obvious and doesn't need to be said. Trust me, at some point, you're going to talk to one or more people who don't consider it obvious that you don't want to kill anybody. Consider reminding them that you don't want to kill them as many times as they need to hear it. In fact, you may even want to consider making it clear that you want to keep them safe as well as yourself. Regardless of what side of this issue you land on, there's at least one thing we all identify with, one thing that should bind the vast majority of people together on the gun issue. What are your feelings on death?
On death?
Yeah.
Uh,
What do you think about people who identify as gun owners?
I mean, I don't have anything against them. It's our right to own a gun. I mean, it's not, as long as they're not doing anything bad with it or illegal, and using it for protection, then I feel like it's right for them to have it.
Yeah, I agree. Ever hear of something called the pew pew life? It's not a reference to those long benches in church, although I wouldn't put it past the religious community to try to appropriate that saying to promote themselves. No, as far as I know, the pew pew life only has one meaning. It's a hashtag expression coined by unofficial spokesman for the National Rifle Association, Colin Noir, to describe when you identify as a gun owner, because of the sound guns make when they're fired or when bullets ricochet, you know, pew pew pew. In my view, I don't think there's an identity in the world that has a broader spectrum of implications than identifying as a gun owner. I mean, I guess in a way, like, people feel empowered when they have a gun, so they feel as if they have a gun, they're sort of fighting against death, maybe, in a way.
Yeah, that could be seen as it too.
Some of you may have heard recently about a college graduate by the name of Caitlin Bennett. Link is in the description to a couple of articles about her. Caitlin made headlines when she posed for photos with an AR-10 slung across her back. In her hand is her graduation cap, the top of which bears the words, "Come and take it," and the photo came with a tweet declaring that now that she's a graduate, she can arm herself on campus. After she received a ton of heat from overcompensating anti-gun folks regarding the controversial photos, some of which saw her posing with her boyfriend, who's also holding a rifle, she decided to up the ante by calling out said heat, tweeting, quote, "The tolerant left is now sending death threats to my boyfriend. Congrats on continuing to prove to everyone why it's important to carry a firearm for protection," unquote. Alright, there's a handful of things I want to unpack about this story. First of all, in some of those controversial photos, her back is turned. Even with as little knowledge about gun usage and operation as I have, I know pretty conclusively that if someone runs up on her with that rifle across her back like a JanSport backpack, that rifle will do about as much to protect her as a JanSport backpack. Even I know that there's a reason that smaller handguns and pistols are more practical for self-defense when just casually walking around in the street or on a campus. I'm not even saying that because she's young and or a woman, like she should be carrying a dainty little pea shooter because that's more feminine. That's not the case. Women can wield rifles. Her gender or age aren't the case. It's that treating a weapon like it's nothing more than a fashion accessory, whether you're a woman wearing a tasteful white dress, a man in full camo gear posing in the forest, a man in a tasteful white dress, a woman in full camo gear posing in the forest, whatever. It's all equally as impractical to protect you from anything when it's being carried that way. It's almost cocky in how bad it's being carried, like, look at this, I'm vulnerable, but I have a weapon that can kill you, better stay away. Aim the gun at the camera like other people do. Show you know how to hold it and use it. Second of all, in other tweets, Caitlin has said that she carries a gun because she refuses to be a victim. Okay, giving her the benefit of the doubt, what types of threats would she need to fend off? Alright, in this day and age, sure, she may be afraid of being attacked, but like I just said, with that gun across her back, if she gets jumped from behind, she won't have time to maneuver it. So she's determined to not be a victim. I admire that. She's taking action to protect herself. But if she plans on hanging out at her alma mater in Kent, Ohio, the cursory look at their crime rates I found online show the chances that she's going to be a victim of a violent crime are pretty friggin' low. Then again, she's now made national headlines, so those chances would be much lower had she decided to not plaster pictures of herself with the challenging sign that says "come and take it" all over the internet. I mean, even if she just harmlessly tweeted one or two photos and she didn't mean for them to go viral, she's a 22-year-old who just graduated college. Was she unaware that tweets go viral? Especially about sensitive topics like this? She likely wouldn't have received a single death threat had those photos lived solely on her refrigerator, or her mantle, or her yearly Christmas cards to the family. No, she had to make a statement. I think it gets to be a little bit dangerous, though, when people kind of center their entire identity around gun ownership.
Yes.
But okay, let's say her chances of suffering something horrible were higher or something really happened. Let's say she went to the Norris Willis Segal School for Action Heroes and took night classes and had to manipulate a rifle in a split second. Fine. Why don't we address the fact that this 22-year-old has never shot anybody, never killed anybody? Yes, I don't know this with 100% certainty, but I'm going to take a stab at it and be pretty sure she's never killed anyone in her life. And if she had to in the future, she might hesitate, like most human beings with any amount of heart probably would. Challenging people by saying "come and take it" is the same brash, cold, dead hand attitude that thousands of other, quote, law-abiding gun owners mirror. These people know no one is going to physically try and take their guns away. Some gun owners may not have the stones to actually pull that trigger on someone who wants to take their guns away. Others may have more than enough stone. Most people who do want to take guns away, though, don't want to risk finding out which a person that is. Then again, while I genuinely hope nothing dangerous, violent, or harmful ever happens to Caitlin Bennett, I'm not sure how some backwards militant lunatic like the same type of anti-abortion crusader who would bomb a hospital hasn't gone off the deep end, found out where she hangs out, snuck behind her and shot her in the name of being anti-gun. If that were to happen, what would people say about something that horrible? I guess the people tweeting death threats at her would say, "Serves her right." What would the pro-gunners say? She should have had better training. She and her boyfriend really should have been hanging out at the mall back to back to cover more angles. I absolutely don't think it would serve her right if she were to get assaulted or hurt or killed, but I'd advise her that it's probably best to not egg people on in this day and age because someone may just call your bluff. I said before how identifying as a gun owner has a broad spectrum of implications, and I think posing for photos with a gun exacerbates those implications. Is that to say you can't take duck face selfies with your new armaments? No, go and duck face all the live long day. Just keep in mind, people will have something to say about it. I don't personally see posing for a photo while holding a gun as an inherent threat, but it is massively passive aggressive. I'm not using this firearm right now, but maybe you should consider not testing whether I would or not. I don't personally feel challenged by a phrase like "come and take it," nor do I personally want to take Caitlin Bennett's gun away from her or her right to have it. But it's a hell of a lot easier for her to make an empty challenge like "come and take it" it than it would be for her to wrap her head around the prospect of firing on one or more human beings and ending their lives. Then again, she doesn't have to. The gun's presence takes care of most of that for her. People don't mess with her because, ta-da, she's armed. She feels like she's on the defensive. She feels safer now. Why? Because people fear her gun. Gun owners in general also feel like they're on the defensive. When all you have to do to get people to not mess with you is wave a gun around, why not? Why bother pairing a clutch purse with your outfit when you can feel the power and authority of a firearm? Anyone can wear a gun like a fanny pack. Not everybody is capable of killing. I'm a gamer. I'm a metalhead. I'm a wrestling fan. Despite those things being despised by some folks out there, none of those three things help me kill a person easier. They're a big part of who I am, but they're just entertainment. When people shout from the rooftops that they're gun owners, for me at least, it raises enormous questions. One of the biggest overall questions anyone needs to ask, again, isn't rhetorical. I genuinely want people to provide an answer. Why is being able to kill people easier something you want to identify with? Especially if, like I said before, you don't want to kill anybody. Here's a little sidebar contrast to that question. Look at all the people who identify as fitness enthusiasts, people who exercise for 4+ hours a day, people who live off of homegrown plant scraps, raw water, and scant bits of free-range organic meat. People do those things to keep themselves alive longer. Unfortunately, you could live for fitness and not make it to 60. I have a grandma, smokes like a chimney, she's hair away from 100, no shit. Eating superfoods doesn't make you immortal. If they did, I'd probably gorge myself on broccoli rabe and goji berries. Not on the same plate, different times a day. Now, I'm not trying to say that identifying as a fitness enthusiast is a worthless endeavor, but there's got to be some balance. Like Oscar Wilde said, everything in moderation, including moderation. I overheard a coworker once say that Coca-Cola is, quote, diabetes in a can. Not if you only have one a month, if even that many. Maybe it's diabetes in a can if you have 10 or more a day. Most of the week I eat pretty good. Home-cooked meat, vegetables, tacos for dinner.
I wanted to do that for Mother's Day.
American Taco Company.
Yeah.
What part of the country are you in?
I am in Missouri.
Missouri, okay. Is that like a regional thing for Missouri? Or do they have...
I think it's just here.
Okay.
Just like slice of pie. It's just my hometown thing.
But if I want to have a bag of candy and a giant bucket of popcorn at a movie, I'm going to chill out and do it. A person can identify with a life centered around physical fitness and health, and even if they don't get killed, they still may only have so long on planet Earth.
I feel like people will always have a sense of fear of death inside of them. Alright, the majority of people.
Most of us lowly mortal human beings fear death to some degree or another, for some reason or another. Because we don't know what comes next, because we're afraid of being without the people around us that contribute to who we are. Hell, even if you're not afraid of dying or the afterlife per se, self-preservation is still an instinct so we can keep going and make the most out of this life. Whether you're a fitness guru or a gun collector, we all have our preferred method of fending off an early grave. If we're to make any headway in trying to find a compromise to this gun problem, that's one thing we need to accept. Some people want to kill, but most are capable of forcing back that instinct, including Caitlin Bennett. Even if that AR-10 she's got is literally the only firearm she owns, she's still way better armed than I am. She has a tool that can help her murder a whole heap of people, but as I said, I'm guessing she never has. But even though some people want to kill and manage to repress that urge, very few of us want to die. Maybe it's more than I'm estimating, but most average people you bump into on the street don't want to die. And whether we all choose to take guns away or arm more people, the reason behind those things is what should bind us all together. What was your feeling about when Trump had said that it was all about like video game violence?
I feel like half of that is actually true.
When I was much younger, I used to play a game on my Sega Genesis called Mercs. It had one of those late 80s, early 90s premises where a former president is kidnapped by rebels from a fictional country, and your mercenary group needs to go in and rescue him. Graphics were cartoony, standard quality for the time. Most people could look at it and see that characters resemble humans, but they weren't photorealistic in any way, definitely not clear enough to evoke emotion. I must have blasted through hundreds, if not thousands, of human enemies, running my blue-clad Player 1 character across corpse after corpse, and my dad would occasionally ask me, "Do you ever think about the families of those people you're killing?" And my response was usually, "Nah, they're electronic, they're not real." Now, I don't recall looking at my dad when responding like that, but I sometimes imagined him smiling, popping his collar, and whispering to himself, "Parenting score 100%, flawless dad victory." Even if that wasn't his reaction, I know he was proud of me for responding to his question the way I did. He was proud of me because even at a very young age, I was acknowledging the difference between the fantasy of a video game and the very real consequence of violence and death. Apparently, when I was that young, I was plenty capable of dealing with the permanence of death. I mean, one of my other favorite video games from back then was Afterburner, the lightning-fast third-person arcade jet fighter game. Being so enamored with it, I used to think, I want to be a jet fighter pilot. And not too long after that, I realized I could get shot down and die. I don't want to be a fighter pilot anymore.
Some games can actually help with, it depends on the game. It helps with depression and stuff like that. I play Kingdom Hearts a lot
Oh yeah.
when I would get like really depressed,
Mhm.
or if I have like tons of stuff on my mind, I would play. I would hop on one of my other consoles and play another game. Uh, I think I'll play like the original, like the Fable Anniversary. I'll play that and like just sit there and listen to the beautiful music in the background.
Oh yeah. After the Parkland school shooting, Donald Trump helped to recharge the push on the game industry in regard to video game violence, up to and including a completely cherry-picked video compilation of violent moments in games. Ironically, only a couple of those cherry-picked moments actually included gun violence perpetrated by a player. Some, like the clips from Fallout, didn't even depict reality, as an NPC takes numerous laugh-inducing shots before their head finally explodes. And it failed, except when pandering to people who already believe that video games and other violent media cause violence.
People, if kids stay in their room 24/7 playing violent games, of course they're gonna have starting to have these mental like thoughts of actually trying it themselves, which is really bad. I feel like it'll get to that point where people will actually, if they stay in the room for long, they'll try kind of like wanting to be more experimental towards the guns.
No, that's a good point. Like most things in life and in the world, perspective is the truest key to understanding things, even as heavy as death. So outside of the monumental amount of evidence and studies that have proven video games don't make kids or adults violent on their own, and outside of the obvious irony that we're discussing how awful violence is with a violent video game in the background,
I just wish that people would take more of their aggression out on video games, you know, to just join like either Warframe or Terra or other stuff like that and just go ham on it. Just if you're got so much anger issues just built up, just get on one of these things and just destroy hell on it.
let's look at this from a principled perspective in order to help those who may not understand gaming the way gamers do. Video games represent an escape. Player can deal with in-game problems like inventory management, life and stamina meters, stat point distribution, loot, resources. Games can teach people young and old about problem solving, danger assessment, reaction time, strategy, planning, team cooperation, communication, etc. Dealing with bigger life shifts in the real world like changing schools or homes, whether or not you want to go to college, what your education focus or major should be in college, paying bills, addressing what impact you want to have in the world. Those things are all either dull and boring or too heavy for people to deal with, sometimes both. As a result, a lot of people from all backgrounds, races, genders, and walks of life turn to video games for the excitement and fantasy and adventure of wondrous places and tense moments. They do that to channel some of the tendencies they wish they could enact in real life but can't because they either aren't brave enough or don't want to risk the consequence. In my mind and heart, I probably have a ton of violence brewing, which is probably why I mostly enjoy games with lots of combat, fighting, battle, situations that in real life I would be frightened to be a part of. In a game, the biggest consequences I have to face are that my character could die and I have to revive, which is easy, or I lose a hardcore character or loot or items and have to get new stuff. When the biggest problem is starting a game over from the beginning, something I was doing constantly decades ago anyway, as ancient Atari games didn't have any type of save feature, it's a lot easier to feel brave and take risks and feel like a hero. I love being a crazy wild card loose cannon when I play games with combat because I can be that type of person with no permanent consequence to myself in the real world. In recent years, I've come to realize the detriment to that. I mean, I'm definitely more on the games don't really affect you that much, but I mean, isolation is absolutely a problem. I mean, when people are, I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, one of the reasons I want to start my YouTube channel anyway is so I can get out there, I can talk to people, I can push myself and have a motivation to speak to people because I've been spending a lot of time like by myself and just kind of in my own head. And
yeah, isolation can really make an impact on what you think and what your actions are going to be.
Yeah, it makes you desperate. It makes you like really question what your morality is.
Yeah, it really makes you question what you're capable of actually doing.
We should take time out of our days to uproot our routines once in a while and engage in activities where we can screw up and enjoy a learning curve, like games where you can practice, train, get more experience, look up strategies online, and overall get better at them to feel that sense of making real progress. On the other hand, that requires balance and responsibility. I'm finding in recent years that when I isolate myself too much in things like games and spend far too much time being a hero or crazy warrior in a world that doesn't exist, my real life feels unimportant, inconsequential, meaningless, meaningless. The harder I work now, the better my chances to fight that.
You know, your last words will be remembered in the people's hearts, and
Happy hunting.
you're truly not, like, either a family member is truly not dead if you keep them in your heart.
Colion Noir said on the Joe Rogan Experience that getting into guns made him more docile because guns can make a person go from 0 to 100 in an instant. They help you develop a respect for life. Honestly, I think he's right. We all get frustrated with people, angry at who they are, what they represent, who they support. Thankfully, most arguments don't end with someone dying. Could be because some gun owners have self-control. Many certainly do. Could be because most people don't own guns. Owning one doesn't mean someone you argue with always dies, but owning one lessens the distance between your anger and someone dying. Thus, you need to have something in you to stop you from pulling the trigger when disagreements get too heated. If you can't do it in a game, I mean, what are you supposed to do? Just say, nope, you're not allowed. Oh, well, that solves everything.
You know, some people think, you know, go to the gym and do it, or do it at, you know, this other kind of places, or go to a psychologist, it will help. Half the time, you know, it doesn't really help. They'll just give you, tell you that this is going on, and then other stuff like that.
In games, consequence is usually clear, but overall temporary. In real life, things are a lot more touchy. There are consequences around every corner when you speak, when you act, when you make decisions, when you attack someone, when you hurt someone, and when you kill someone. Even if you just get angry and pull a gun on someone, not even intending to shoot, they'll think their life could end in a snap of a finger. Less muscle effort than it would take to ball an entire fist. They may never speak to you again if you do that, because they just saw you threatening their life. They may never forgive you because you threatened them with an inanimate object, a thing that we're not supposed to judge unfairly because Colion Noir is hashtag still waiting for guns to jump up and shoot people on their own. But in this hypothetical case, a person just implied a threat on another person's life with that inanimate object. Even a threat bears consequence, permanent effects that can't easily be taken back, most of which involve the potential for death. Games, movies, TV shows, virtual reality, all of those things represent ways for us to learn how to channel our natural base tendencies in contexts that don't physically hurt people. I understand that blaming guns themselves, wanting across the board bans on some of them, feels unreasonable to gun owners. I can see the truth in that. But it's even more unreasonable to think that electronic media that can help us experience violence harmlessly is making people worse across the board. If anything, we should all be enjoying games as violent as they get and addressing the very significant difference between being crazy and nutty in the electronic world, experiencing all of our wildest fantasies electronically, and treating each other with dignity, respect, and understanding in the real world, where if you die, you don't get extra life pickups. You don't get to buy continues with rolls of quarters. Colion also said on Joe Rogan's show that if he had to pull a gun and shoot someone, he'd probably need therapy. Even though I disagree with him on some aspects of guns, I absolutely believe him when he says this. Deep down, I think he's a good person, that if he really had to use that gun on a human being like many other people, probably many other gun owners, he might need to see a doctor or a counselor. That's not me digging him or calling him weak, that's calling him human. I get that a lot of gun owners are upset with liberals, but one way for gun owners to quell that bad image they have of being ticking time bombs is to emphasize how little they actually want to kill other people. The trouble is, when guns make up a person's entire identity, I imagine it's hard for those gun owners to express how harmless they are. After all, having that gun means you have a tool that makes it easy to kill one or more people. Convincing others you're harmless kind of deflates that identity just a little. So maybe don't emphasize how harmless you are so much as emphasize that it'd be pretty traumatic if you actually had to kill someone. I get that it's fun to posture, but like I said, someone will eventually call your bluff. You can either posture now and need counseling later, or support each other now and maybe not need counseling later. I get that a lot of people feel they need firearms, and I don't want to bar people from meeting that need, but right now we need camaraderie a lot more. What do you think it would be like if every single person in America had a gun?
Terminal hacked.
I feel like it would be more safe.
What do you think it would be like if everyone in America had a gun?
It'd just be chaos, man.
Instead of lamenting guns all being taken away, let's imagine for a minute if guns were in every single home, held by literally every single person. In my crazy brain, I see guns becoming the new sexy status symbol. Think about it, most people out there have cars, but every once in a while, out of nowhere, you see a Lamborghini. You only see it for a second too, it's like seeing a celebrity. It doesn't even register in your brain that that's what it is until it's gone. But clearly the person driving that sleek Italian exotic is trying to show they have some higher status than you and your friends who drive, I don't know, whatever beat up, run down, bourgeois shit cans that peons putter around in these days. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people like to collect them. They like to sort of,
Well,
I guess, admire
I feel
them.
like collecting them, it's kind of different than just being an ordinary guy, having a lot of guns in your closet,
Distract the enemy
ready
while
to shoot
a
anyone that comes near you.
rates the ship for
Yeah.
much needed supplies.
Because if you collect them,
Presence known.
most of the time you don't touch your guns,
Life support has
That's
been
true.
cut off.
or you have them somewhere safe, where no one knows where they're at
I'm
except
sending
yourself.
auxiliary life support. The first life support capsule has arrived.
Sounds
Activate
at least
it when
close.
your supply
I mean, I
is
know that
low.
there's people with, you know,
Look for
cars,
personal
and
life
they
support
if they
modules
drive a
dropped by
fast enough
fallen
car, or
enemies.
they own a fast enough car, their thinking is, well, I have this fast car. Why am I not driving it fast?
Yeah.
But look at the enormous wealth of things people feel inadequate about, in addition to their cars, their clothes, their jobs, their salaries, their relationships, their spouses, their sexual experiences, how many friends they have on social media, how many likes their average posts get. Hell, people are judgmental toward each other about dick and tit size. That same attitude of always needing to go bigger, better, badder, stronger, throbbing with more power than anything that's come before, that attitude would probably get transferred to people's firearms. Most people don't have guns, or at least there are tons of people that don't have them. That being the current case, if you buy the smallest possible little pistol, as long as that thing is loaded with real life bullets, you're still armed more than a person who isn't armed at all. So in a scenario where every single person is armed, elevating your status isn't as simple as I paid money, now I'm armed. No. You need a higher caliber, better mods, better ammunition, bigger size in general. Really try and picture that. And why stop there? Guns could very well replace etiquette in that scenario. Used to be in ancient times, people had this thing called manners. They knew how to say please and thank you when they wanted something or they received something. When people entered a room, they would greet each other with a handshake and a smile, maybe a wave, maybe a hug, maybe even kiss each other on the cheeks. At the rate we're going, our attitudes with guns will be pushed so far to the surface that etiquette will one day equate to busting into a place, aiming your gun at everyone, politely requesting that no one make any sudden movements, and then nonchalantly lowering your weapon when everyone goes back to their business, because that's the only real way people will know to feel safe and noticed and acknowledged as having the capability for death at the same time. I mean, as far as people fearing death, I mean, I feel like that's one of the reasons that people feel like more guns out there would be helpful. You know, like I feel like I keep going back to the episode of South Park where like every single person had a gun, and like every time an argument sparked up, people pulled their guns out, and they ended up putting their guns away because no one wants to get shot. And I'm like, yeah. So why don't we just do that? Couldn't we just do that? Couldn't we just start that way and just not have guns out?
Yeah. Yeah, that's nice. That's a pretty smart way of thinking about it too. If everyone will have a gun, people wouldn't want to die, so they'll probably put their gun away.
What about daily routine? Some people choose to exercise and change their diet to trim some fat, like I said before. Some train in martial arts. They practice every single day to ensure their striking and reversals are on point.
I'm not going to say like crazy people, but people with mental problems.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes mental illness is kind of used as kind of like a scapegoat. It's kind of like is to blame, but and everybody who has any degree of mental illness kind of feels that they're being put in the same basket as like mass murderers, but it's different kind of mental illness. I mean, I don't think a person.
It's not.
Okay.
Oh, it's not like every single person who has mental illness is capable of doing those kind of things.
Yeah. Yeah, a person who, you know, washes their hands a lot with OCD or something isn't gonna, you know, murder people.
Yeah.
But why bother with any of that shit? If all you want is power, a gun can give you that without having to change a single thing about your eating habits. You don't have to waste time exercising or training. Fuck that shit. No one lives forever. Just get a gun. It's so much quicker. Time is precious. Bodies deteriorate. Obviously, if everyone has a gun, insecurity just vanishes, right? Truth is, when you own a gun, you're not so much safe as much as you gain an ability to kill someone quicker than you could with just your bare hands. There's an enormous universe of difference between being safe and easier capability for death. Just because you own a tool that can help you kill easier, that doesn't make you safe or secure or confident or no longer self-conscious. Not only do you need to know how to handle that gun, you also need to know how to walk with it, carry it, store it, and maintain it. Otherwise, it doesn't entirely keep you safe, or it can be used to endanger your own safety. We as human beings organized in a society bear an insane amount of weight from the emotional competition we engage in over things that should be meaningless, like vehicles and garments and body shape. We can mince numbers, toss out a bunch of stats. You don't think with the amount of people arguing and being more sensitive that people would be more prone to getting in trouble and losing control?
Yeah, but do you know that the places with the lowest crime rate in the world,
Ready to defend. We've got robots.
there's lots of guns in those areas.
And it's not even entirely untrue to say that. But what exactly reassures us that we're not staring down the barrel of the most trendy arms race imaginable? It's one thing to talk down to someone about their car or their clothes. That just makes you a jerk. And for now, it's not illegal to be a jerk. Insulting someone's firearm, the source of their confidence, the very thing that causes their sense of security to even out with everyone else's, that's a weak point that can bring about reprisal.
But I feel like if you're over worried, like you're always thinking about these guns and stuff, and you're collecting a lot.
Everything we came for.
Those people may be more inclined to turn into a murderer or something.
So I'm discussing the possibilities if everyone in the country had a gun because many gun owners feel they're on the defensive about their rights being taken away. Imagine my surprise then when this was brought to my attention.
I forgot the name of this place, but there everyone is legally required to carry a gun and have it in their house locked and loaded, and there's absolutely no crime there at all.
What place is that? I'll be honest, and I genuinely apologize if this sounds disrespectful, but when I first heard him mention it, I thought, what kind of fake news are you reading? But I couldn't help giving this due diligence, and I looked it up.
Kennesaw, Georgia.
In Georgia.
Yes, it's mandatory for gun possession.
Mandatory.
I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
This will take a moment.
Wait, what town in Georgia?
Kennesaw.
Kennesaw?
Kennesaw.
Kennesaw. Okay. It's true. Kennesaw, Georgia really does have a law passed in 1982 legally requiring the, quote, head of household to own a loaded gun. And in the larger discussion about gun rights, I find this fascinating. For both sides of the aisle. I love it when that happens. Okay, first of all, the population of Kennesaw has held pretty steady around 33,000 people for many years. Not many more, not many fewer. So you'd think with all the fervor surrounding gun bans, the potential for confiscation, the fear of destruction, that Kennesaw's population would see a surge. Like there should be angry gun owners from all across this great nation going on grand pilgrimages to the holy land of the southeast of the United States, where a humble town does its citizens justice by requiring people to arm themselves. Granted, uprooting one's whole life is never easy, but if being armed means that much to some people, and there's a place where not only will you not be bothered about being armed, but it's a law that you have a gun, why not make the move? You'd think that would happen, but it hasn't. Second of all, their crime rate is not nothing, but admittedly it's extremely low. It's very close to nothing. But apparently, it's always been low. Kennesaw wasn't a hotbed of criminal activity, then the law was passed and suddenly nothing bad happened anymore. Thus, some have seen that law as, quote, meaningless, and even spokespeople for the town who supported the law's passing called it, quote, symbolic and unenforceable. I do think one could argue that if the law states every head of household has to own a gun, maybe you don't want to risk invading any homes there. So perhaps the law has been keeping crime low? Could also be fair to speculate. Unenforceable, though, that's a great one. Authorities have no way to tell if people were actually arming themselves per what the law states. Not to mention, there wasn't any recordable information to tell if any additional guns were purchased as a result of people being required by law to have them. Talk about polar opposite of the rest of the country. Across the entire United States, we have people making veiled threats and challenges to take their guns from their cold, dead hands. In other words, you will have to murder me before I give up my gun. That's what that means. Please try and shoot me to take my gun away so I have an excuse to kill you without getting in any trouble. Pro-gunners, goading anti-gunners, and politicians take their Second Amendment rights away, and in Kennesaw, there are people who are so eager to not be armed, they're willing to break the law. I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it to remind people. Deep down, I do not want to take people's guns away. If people can keep their guns and we can all live safely and peacefully, I'm fine with that. I want to see a situation where people aren't immediately looking to guns as the easiest possible cure for their insecurities and fears. The world, the internet, social media, all of those places are dangerous, hostile, and not all that nice. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. We're all insecure about things, afraid others will take things the wrong way.
Anything that's political or that has to do with like politics or anything like that, I'll just, keep it to myself, and then if someone asks me, I'll say just a little bit of it, but I don't really like to talk much about politics because it just causes more fights.
It kind of does, yeah. It's very difficult for people to have a calm and civil talk about things. At least for me, encouraging people to get along better is my main priority. You can identify however you want with whatever you want, but the truth is, I identify as liking certain music and playing games and watching wrestling. I identify as being an almost 40-year-old Italian-American man, but those are just things that describe me. Those tastes, my age, my nationality, my gender, they're mostly surface. Identifying with carrying or owning one or more guns says something much deeper about you. It's the pinnacle of exclaiming just how defensive you are. It says, I carry a tool that can allow me to kill you before you kill me. So tell me, how many people want to kill you? Your entire identity is centered around it. You end up kind of wanting more of that, right? I mean, it kind of inspires people to stockpile weapons.
Now, the enemy will start destroying data.
Yeah, I think that's a little too much. I feel like guns should only be used for self-defense. I mean, like, if you want to collect them and like that's your hobby, that's okay. But
You need to hurry.
as long as you're not, doing anything illegal, it's fine.
I suppose if you go so far as to identify as a gun owner, well, the next step is to get your hands in your very own arsenal. Do you think people should be allowed to stockpile guns?
No.
No.
If you have one gun, that's fine. You don't have to have a whole closet full of guns. If you're only going to protect yourself and your family, why have so many guns?
Contrary to popular belief among gun owners, stockpiling an arsenal in your house does present a danger. Owning more guns doesn't mean you're invincible. If you own a literal arsenal, a couple of things could happen. For instance, you could lend some of those guns out, say on a specific day, at a specific time, at a specific place, for a specific purpose. Buying a ton of guns doesn't mean they have to stay stationary in your home. They can be picked up, brought places, given out, distributed, whether for free or for a price, whether legally or not. And while you specifically may be level-headed enough to care for an arsenal, maintain it, monitor it, unless I'm misunderstanding human anatomy, you can only effectively wield a gun or two simultaneously. Real life isn't like video games, where players will verbally attack developers who don't let them carry obnoxious amounts of loot and gear on their person. Someone you give or lend a gun to might not be as level-headed as you are. They could reach a time in their lives when they feel threatened enough by the world around them that they need to fight back against whatever they think is threatening them. After all, people constantly state that guns are needed for defense. It never seems to occur to those people that those who aren't armed may fear some type of offense, and offense is usually what we all agree is the problem. Someone getting a gun by whatever means, going rogue and killing people. They never seem to take into account the possibility for violent revolts. Groups in America fighting and killing other groups in America because arguing and communication break down and war ensues. Alright, let's pull it back. Maybe that last part is a little bit melodramatic. Maybe armed civil wars and insurrections in America are unlikely. Maybe we live in enough peace that those things are easily quelled. But how about a more real possibility? What if someone were to break into your home? What if they get access to your stockpile of guns? Like I said, you may be a quote law-abiding gun owner, a label the NRA loves to shower its members with. But if a person is willing to break into your home to steal your weapons, they clearly aren't abiding by the law. And there's no telling what they do once they have your guns. While so many people in America now are crowing about the Second Amendment and how quote 2A means they can own any guns they want, what are the odds those same people would agree to a law being passed to legally require homes with more than 10 or 20 guns in them to be equipped with security systems, alarms, cameras, monitors, and other electronic methods to ensure their stockpile of guns isn't stolen or misused in order to own those guns at all? People should be allowed to own weapons, but not required to safeguard them? Do you think if people wanted to be able to stockpile guns, do you think it should be like a legal requirement that they should have some kind of a security system on their
Yes,
home?
they should have some kind of security system to where they only know the password and only them can get into it.
I don't want to tell people they can't or aren't allowed to stockpile guns. Alright, let me be honest. I can be objective and say how I feel in the same video as long as I clearly separate the two. Let me give it a try. I want to tell people they can't or shouldn't stockpile guns. Owning one or more is one thing, but stockpiling is another. I'm afraid to commit to telling them they can't because of what could happen to me should I tell them that. Because they could feel judged, and in 2018, you know how it is. No one wants to feel judged. With people who identify as gun owners. Like that's their entirety of their identity is the fact that they own a gun.
I feel like that's being a coward. If you need to have a gun in order to identify who you really are, then that's just being a big coward.
Colion Noir's YouTube channel trailer at the time of this recording is a video called Why You Shouldn't Get Into Guns. It's about 3 minutes. It starts fairly benign by making fair points about how when you collect guns, you're not just collecting guns, but also the attachments and accessories that go along with them, fashionable things to make them look cooler, etc. Honestly, great counterpoints to just being a staunch pro-gun advocate. Halfway through though, the mood of the video changes, and he would have you believe that people you know who see your stockpile of guns are just judging you unfairly from an uninformed position, to the point where the 2-minute mark sees Colion driving a moving sign into his yard saying, "This is the reality of getting into guns." Unless every single gun and every single bullet in your possession is monitored, inventoried, and accounted for at all times, you may be endangering others around you by hoarding that firepower and not protecting it from people who might steal it for their own purposes. I'll entertain the idea that your arsenal doesn't make you a ticking time bomb, but you need to prove that to me. Actually, better you prove that to other people first. They are actively trying to take your guns away or restrict them. I'm not trying to take your guns away. I want to find a compromise where people who want guns can have them and people who don't want guns can both feel safer. What I want everybody to do is breathe, hear what I'm talking about, and dedicate a few minutes to reassuring me that you aren't going to come to my home and pull that trigger simply because I'm asking questions. I'm an open-minded guy, but when I see gun owners get as defensive as they've been lately, I don't see people wanting to help others. I see people looking to justify attacking others.
If they take advantage of it and start taking people's lives, then not just being a coward.
Speaking of speaking, Colion Noir has another video on his channel, a 4-minute piece called They Don't Want to Have a Real Conversation, where he claims you should shoot and or own guns in order to talk about them. He says that rich white liberals and gun control advocates don't want to include pro-gun people in their discussions about policy. Why? Well, naturally because it pokes holes in their narrative. Now I'll admit, sometimes that's true. There are unquestionably plenty of liberals making the emotional mistake of fucking up how they demand legislation, and that's not good when you're making demands. When you push for certain policies, you need to have as much information as possible. And in this day and age of easy access to just about all the information you could need, there's next to no excuse to not have that information. However, the majority of times when I see the topic of guns come up on social media, I click comments to see what people are saying, and the pro-gun advocates always seem to say the same exact things. Second Amendment, tyrannical government, don't take my guns away, shall not be infringed. This just in, 17 children killed in a school, another 10 killed mere months later. What are gun owners saying? Second Amendment, tyrannical government, don't take my guns away, shall not be infringed. I completely agree that we need to continue discourse to figure out what solutions can make everyone happy, and gun owners should be included. Colion's right about that part. If we all agree that guns should be discussed and addressed in some way, then including gun owners in that conversation is important, as there is a ton of insight they can grant. I'm absolutely with him on that. The problem is, when average people's real fears of being shot, which stems from people actually being shot, get completely overpowered by other people's theoretical fears of government and tyranny, it's no wonder liberals don't tend to include gun owners. Principle and belief and theoretical fear based on decades and centuries old history are taking precedence over people continuing to actually die in the present. I got a better idea. Include gun owners in the conversation, but exclude the NRA. Whoa, hold on. We can't just exclude the National Rifle Association from the gun discussion. Oh yeah, we sure as fuck can. The NRA is concerned with very specific things. Arming people, selling weapons, keeping the gun industry alive and well. They're not concerned with encouraging gun owners to care for other people or to protect other people or to volunteer in communities or band together and watch out for one another in groups. Notice, whenever a quote good guy with a gun does something good in their community, they get lauded as a hero. The NRA doesn't encourage community patrols, volunteer programs, starting militias to root out real criminals, deeper mental health and psychological testing to determine when a person demonstrating red flags can get help. They're concerned with personal freedom and how guns express your personal freedom to feel as defensive and defended as you want. As long as you feel safe with one or more guns, the NRA is happy. If all the NRA is going to concern themselves with is swaying opinion to make people think they all need guns or more of them, which conveniently gets more people to buy more guns, why include them in the conversation? They have interests, a conflict of interests, you might say. I say include gun owners in the conversation, include former and current military personnel, police, people who own and fire guns all the time, include gun experts too. I want to hear from them so we can find an acceptable compromise to ensure people have personal freedom and safety, but we also keep other people who have a right to be unarmed safe as well. The NRA is not concerned about those people, and as long as that's the case, and I leave room open for that to change if they feel so compelled to do anything at all to change it, and like I always say, if I'm wrong about any of that, please let me know in the comments. I'll be more than happy to give them that credit, but until then, leave the NRA out of that conversation. Gun owners and NRA members don't have to be the same thing. Do you ever think about dying yourself?
Do I think about dying?
Yeah.
I think about that a lot. Through these times, I do, hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
But if it does come to where I have to sacrifice myself to protect any members of my family, like my nephew, my sisters, or anyone, I would be happy to actually sacrifice myself if it means they'll be safe.
Here's the biggest problem of all. Because this gun discussion deals so heavily with not just people's rights, but people's ability to defend themselves, people feel their lives are at stake constantly. Thus, even though it doesn't deal directly with gun rights themselves, we need to deal with the inevitability of death. Because everyone is, whether they're cognizant of it or not. Regardless of your position on the gun issue itself, whether you're a fervent two-way defender or you march for your life, whether you think an arsenal is better at protecting you, or whether you think disarming everyone in society is actually feasible, whether you're a marathon runner fueled by quinoa and tofu, or whether you swear off exercise and live off fatback and grilled sausage while packing a loaded Magnum revolver, death is a factor that most of us want to avoid as long as possible, but none of us can escape forever. We all have our preferred ways of dealing with it, but that's your common bond, folks, right there. Death. It's always been there. And until we figure out how to ensure it doesn't happen, it's always going to be there. It hovers over the gun debate. Everyone is getting emotional. Everyone is letting their panic overtake them. People are doing basically everything they shouldn't do when trying to formulate cogent reasons for why their position is sound. They're cherry picking, they're deflecting, they're counterattacking, they're making false equivalences, they're focusing on being right far more than being fair, much of the time failing at both. What we need right now is just some calm, critical thinking. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Despite how chaotic this discussion has been, both for me doing this and for other people out there, let's take a moment and start literally from scratch. Zero, blank slate. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. 3 easy, 1 hard, and hopefully this can be put into enough perspective for every single person. Ready? Here we go. First question. Why are people scared to be shot? Easy, right? Guns are tools that propel projectiles through the air at speeds faster than we normally move. If someone pulls a gun on you and you wiggle around, you might get lucky and maybe the shooter can't lead you well enough and they'll miss. But if you're stationary or your back is turned like Caitlin Bennett in those photos, with enough time to aim, someone who shoots you will hit their target. Given how little time a shot takes to hit a target, that means less time to get medical help. So if you're not rushed to the hospital immediately, you'll die. Second question. Why are guns effective as a security measure?
Honestly, they're not really effective.
No.
I feel like they're taking lives more than they're actually protecting us. It's just something that I think is like should be controlled more. Guns are like made, well, are supposed to be made to protect people, but as of right now, they're mainly being used to take away lives.
Yeah. But that's why they're seen as effective in a way. When ending another person's life is as easy as a finger twitch, it grants you power. Power that can be bought. Power that's simple to grant. Power that's simple to acquire. People train their whole lives to be proficient in fighting, but when that movie trope of the shadowboxing ninja getting shot by a protagonist is in our mind, it's easy to see why people want a piece more than they want to sign up for jiu-jitsu. They don't want to stare down years of discipline and training and pain and work and strain just to be defeated by someone with steady aim. When people around you know that you have a gun, it causes them to act differently because your power is derived from other people's fear of dying in a literal instant. Sure, they can rely on you for protection and defense, but that requires good enough rapport, which also takes work. Third question. What do you do if you want to defeat fear? Not as easy to answer, but most of us know an answer. You face that fear, right? If you're afraid of heights, go up on the roof and look over the edge. If you're afraid of spiders, dig around in the dirt. If you're turophobic, in other words, if you're afraid of cheese, I don't know, buy some cheese and eat it. And when it doesn't kill you, congrats, you're cured. The point is, you don't conquer your fear of something by curling up in the corner, running away from it, or praying it goes away. You almost always need to stare it down and face it to prevent it from overpowering you, or to keep yourself from being overpowered by it. Last question. Pay attention. This is the hard one. What happens when a person stops fearing death? Here's a fact, and it doesn't require statistics. The best facts never do. The more you see something horrifying, the more potential you have to get used to it. The more potential you have to not be afraid of it anymore. So, what happens when people aren't afraid of getting shot? What happens when people aren't afraid of consequences in general? Every single one of us has things we just love to do right this minute, but we don't do some of those things. Why? Well, we're afraid some of those things will yield reprisal, legal action, someone defending themselves, someone killing us. Look at what happens when someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness. Some people getting that type of news want to live out their deepest fantasies before they die because they realize they don't have much time left before the end. Because one of the greatest consequences in life, death, is coming sooner than later. Less pain in life, less time to wait. Truth is, you don't have to be diagnosed with a terminal illness to think your life is over. If a physically healthy person isn't afraid to die, whether they're mentally healthy or not, they have nothing restricting them from going all out. They're no longer afraid of the consequences that restrict them from doing horrific things, like committing mass murder. The idea of arming more people as a solution to this problem only works best when we're all equally afraid of death. For now, most of us are, so it kinda works. Problem is, not everyone is equally afraid of it any longer. Every single day, there are fewer and fewer people in the world who are afraid to die, who are afraid of imprisonment, who are afraid of being punished in any way for crimes they commit. And when that fear can't be used against a person, pointing a gun at them becomes far less effective. Remember what I said about facing fears? The more real guns people see floating around in the world, and the more shootings people hear about in the news, the more common they become, the less afraid of shootings they grow to be. Even if they could be stopped by good guys with guns, they'll just grow in number. They'll fight against it harder. The unfortunate part is that living every day being terrified of the consequence of death is even more unhealthy. It can lead you to not living your life to its fullest potential, not chasing your dreams, not working on something that can have an impact. We all need to fear death to remember our fragility, but we need to defeat that fear in order to be happy. So what are your feelings on death?
On death.
Yeah.
Let's see. I feel like it's a thing that most people fear, but shouldn't fear, because it's gonna happen to anyone at any moment. So why fear it instead of, I feel like people shouldn't fear it. It's just a thing that happens, and once you die, you'll probably just be in a better place than what you are right now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no way to tell if it's gonna be better, but you at least don't know.
You don't know what's gonna happen. You can either go to a better place or stay here. But something that you shouldn't fear is death, because it's gonna happen anyways.
You think about death at all?
Not really.
No.
I mean, like, I feel like you can't be mad about it, because once you die, there's nothing there. Like, you're dead. So
Yeah.
There's nothing, you don't want to have any feelings after that. But I feel like all you do is, like, it will just affect the ones that love you and stuff, and that the people that you leave behind.
Yeah. Are you scared of it at all?
Not really.
We all have fears to face. The fear of being vulnerable in an increasingly dangerous world. The fear of treating each other with decency and getting our heads bit off for it. The fear of exposing ourselves by admitting we're afraid at all and then getting shamed or made fun of. The fear that we're unable to hold back some of our anger when all most of us want to do these days is fucking unleash. The fear that by showing others love and comfort and help, we're risking pissing off extremists that instill even more fear or push harder to manipulate society in selfish directions. Fear binds us all together. You may look at your neighbor and see them merely as a label, a heading, a banner, a team, something to associate them with something you despise. But you and your neighbor are both afraid. Yeah, it's something that binds us all together, certainly.
Yeah, it happens to everyone. No one can escape it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's something that we should all sort of come together on.
Yeah. There's no escaping that.
My point in all this is simple. If we don't learn to help each other with this fear, mark my words, these problems are going to continue to escalate. And the worse it gets, the more likely we are to enter into a situation where either authority can't contain it or authority contains it more harshly than any of us want. This is Killer Cardinal DA7 reminding you to use your head, be nice to each other, and take the time to think. Talk to you later. Alright, I think I'm going to take off, but thanks for talking, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Like I said, when I'll upload my stuff, and when I do and it's all ready to go, then I'll send you a message and you can check it out.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
You too.
All right.
Thanks very much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
No problem. And you have a beautiful day.
You too, sir.
I'll try.